Hello, and welcome to today's Tiger webinar. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you and your entire Tiger family are well during the global pandemic. We want you to know that the RIT Office of Alumni Relations is available to help all Tigers in the coming weeks with a variety of needs, including new virtual content, learning opportunities, and networking and career assistance. We especially encourage everyone to connect to the RIT Alumni Association's social media channels, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, where you'll find up-to-date communications and opportunities to connect to other Tiger alumni in your region and your industry. Those links are found in the chat box. The chat box can be opened by clicking on the chat icon at the right of your webinar window. Many in our RIT family have asked how they can help our students in our university during this unprecedented time, and we are incredibly grateful for those offers. If you're able to help, we encourage you to support the area that is in most interest to you. To give, you can use the link also located in the chat box. We want to ensure that everybody is ready and familiar with the presentation tools. If you're already joining from a remote location and are signed in currently into your company's VPN, we encourage you to close that channel during the webinar to increase the quality of the webinar transmission. The webinar platform is secure and does not require VPN access. All attendees have joined in mute mode. However, your questions for our panel can be entered in the chat box at any time throughout the discussion. We will make every effort to address all your comments and questions throughout the webinar. You are joining this event using broadcast audio. If you wish to dial in by phone, dial-in information is provided in the chat box. Live captioning is also being provided, and you can find the link to access that in the chat box as well. Today's webinar will be recorded and made available, complete with captions, in approximately 1 week following today's event. All participants will receive an email with the link to the recording. If you have any technical questions, please feel free to type those in the chat box as well, and we'll do our best to get you the appropriate answers. Now on to our webinar. We're happy to welcome Tiger men's hockey coach Wayne Wilson. Coach Wilson is excited to not only get started with the season, but to give you an update on what the 2020-2021 season will look like. With 22 seasons at RIT under his belt, Coach Wilson has guided the university to become one of the most successful and respected programs in all of college hockey. Wilson's impressive record with the Tigers includes leading the team through the transition to the respected Atlantic Hockey League. In 13 seasons in that league, RIT has won 4 regular season titles, 3 postseason championships, and made 3 NCAA tournament appearances. Coach Wilson became the first coach to win the National Coach of the Year at both the Division I and Division III levels in 2010. Moderating tonight's discussion are the voices of RIT men's hockey, Matt Campbell, Scott Biggar, and Ed Trefzger, who will take your questions during the webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Ed, I'll kick it over to you. The audience is all yours.
Thanks, Ron, and thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening. Before we get into some questions, we'd like to give Coach Wilson an opportunity just to say a few welcoming comments.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and it's great to be talking hockey finally. It's been a very long summer. I guess it's been a long spring, summer, and now fall, but our guys are really, really excited to be back on the ice, and really looking forward to playing the season and then playing it in an environment that can be safe as possible. And there's too many people to thank that have been working behind the scenes to try and kick off this season, starting with the Atlantic Hockey Office, but probably more importantly, our administration at RIT have done a great job, from our president right to our athletic director, our trainer who's been very involved, Ben Empke, with trying to put this season together. There's our policies and procedures in order to play games have changed dramatically, and probably too detailed to explain right now, but we'll go over some of those as well. But we are very excited to be playing here this fall.
Well, this year's schedule is going to be quite a bit different. I know it's been a lot of work with the league. We're going to see a small number of teams a lot of times. What's our schedule looking like right now?
Well, we're really waiting, and I'm sorry for the delay in putting our schedule out, but we're waiting for one of our non-conference games that could be potentially played November 13th and 15th, a Friday and a Sunday. The following weekend, we have Colgate for 2 games, same thing on a Friday and a Sunday, and then we get into league play. But In our pod, we'll be traveling to Air Force for 2 games, but Robert Morris, Mercyhurst, Niagara, and Canisius will be playing 5 times. 2 of those teams will be playing 3 at home and 2 on the road, and the other 2 vice versa. We'll also be playing Long Island, 2 games at home, but those games will not count. They're on our schedule. They're almost like non-conference games, but they will not count in the standings. It was because we have an odd number of teams in our league, we're playing them so that you don't have an off weekend. And as we're trying to play a condensed schedule, keep everyone playing, and they'll be rotating through everyone as well. And some teams will be going to their rink as well. So they're strictly scheduled. They're not in our league, but they will be on our schedule. And wins and losses will not count in our standings versus Long Island.
Wayne, with the schedule and kind of pod setup this year, the standings aren't going to be by winning percentage or necessarily by points. The league has talked about a point percentage system. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, just to backtrack just a bit, with the way the schedule is made up, we'll be playing 24 scheduled games, but only 22 will count because of Long Island. Air Force, because of their situation, they're playing in both pods. They'll be playing 24 games, but they'll be playing Long Island 4 times for only 20 games. Well, what do you do with an uneven schedule with one team not playing as many games? And then we're anticipating there might be some hiccups with the virus, and teams are having to sit out some weekends. So not knowing what our schedule, not what our schedule is going to look like, but how the standings are going to finish as far as countable league games played, instead of win-loss percentage, which is 100% for the win and 0% for the loss, we've gone with a percentage of possible points earned. So if you look at last year's standings, you could possibly, if you won in regulation, you could get 3 points, the other team 0. But if you won in a 3-on-3 or a shootout, which we're going to be going to right away, so after our 60-minute game, we'll be going right to the 3-on-3 and shootout. You still got 1 point even if you lost, and the winner would only get 2 and not the whole 3. Well, we're taking those possible points, so a team that loses would still get 33% of the point if they lost in a shootout, as an example. We think it's just a little bit more fair. We like the shootout and the 3-on-3 for the entertainment purposes, but we are concerned that a team in a shootout would get 100% of the points if we did it by winning percentage. So we're doing it by this point. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
Coach, in addition to the pod play and the kind of odd schedule, only playing half the teams in the conference, I know that there's some changes that they've made to the schedule as far as times go, as far as sometimes a day in between. Can you talk a little bit about how the travel schedule looks and what they've done to adjust that this year?
Well, you'll see when our schedule does come out. There's with teams like Niagara and Canisius, although I believe Canisius were even on a Thursday, Saturday. They're a little bit closer, but when you go to Mercyhurst, it's almost 3 hours, particularly when you're talking January, February games. When you're going to Robert Morris, you're 4.5 to 5 hours. We needed to put some days in between, and we want to try and get our athletes back home in bed, since we're playing home and away almost every weekend. I think we have 1 series at Robert Morris. We go there for 2, and Air Force we're going for 2, but the rest will be home and away. And if you take Mercyhurst as an example, let's call it 3 hours. If we play a 5 o'clock game, the game ends at 7:15, and we're on the road by 8. You're home by 11 and bed by 12, and then you're ready for your next game. But it was going to be difficult if we didn't play any earlier. Teams would be getting back maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, then trying to play the next game. And then the virus is one risk, but there's also a chance of injury, which will not go away in hockey. Playing 5 times, we may be risking it. I think the rivalries will certainly notch up this year, in particular if you get a team in the playoffs. You could be playing someone as many as 8 times in a season, which is an awful lot of games. But the social distancing come the 5th game may be a little more difficult on the ice this year than it has been in the past.
Well, as we lead into the schedule, it's also been a different preseason and getting ready? What have the preparations been like, practices, and when were you able to get going with that?
Yeah, well, we got going right away because we wanted to get through some of the different phases the best we could, and at that time we had not officially canceled the October 3rd starting date. So until that's official, you still got to be on your toes and ready. But it started with some of our guys having to quarantine right off the get-go for 14 days. It started in small groups. So even when they came over to the rink, they would have to text our equipment manager, Steve Hanson, by their house or their apartment, depending on their situation. So they're in groups of 5 or 6. So if they want to get their skates fitted and things like that, only their house was allowed to be in the rink at that particular time. The other people would have to make an appointment at a different time. We were in different locker rooms and things like that. We went then from the 5 to 6 to the 10 to 12. And now we're practicing as a full team, but we are still dressing in separate locker rooms. We are wearing masks during the on ice sessions. We are, I'm just trying to think, I guess earlier on when we started with dry land outside, we were distancing there as well before we even got into the rink. We're still not able to use our weight room right now. So we've pretty well up until this week, I guess, we've been outside doing everything with our conditioning and off-ice conditioning and that. So we're getting closer. Contact is the other thing that I guess our practice would resemble more of a woman's game as far as the contact is concerned. But we'll be cleared to go pretty soon. So we're still looking for, which is, we're very close to getting permission from the state to be hosting the games. We've been testing as well, not as often as we will be starting next week. We'll be testing 3 times a week. Right now it's every 2 weeks. I believe it's a quarter or maybe half the team. We've all been tested at one point or another, once or twice already. So we're following that as well. So there's a lot of things that we're having to get through as we move forward, and almost too many to explain, but those are kind of the general guidelines we're following right now before we even get into game phase.
As we're talking about the schedule, several of our listeners have chimed in asking about fan access to games and how they might be able to watch if it's going to be streamed. Do we have any information about that?
Yeah, and I'm not, as of right now, I know up until January 1st, for sure, there will be no fans. And that's a New York State rule. I think it's going to be doubtful. You know, I don't want to predict what January is looking at as we are still at the end of October, but I think fans are going to be doubtful. The games will be streamed, but I also believe our Sports Zone is also working on trying to get them on local TV as well. Like I said, almost a lot of our games are going to be starting at 5 p.m. and for travel reasons for the athletes. So they may not be live, they may be tape delayed, but there will be access to it. It hasn't been firmed up. We'll probably announce that with our schedule as well, which we thought we might have out by yesterday. But like I said, we're still dealing with one non-conference series and just making sure that they're signed off by not only the athletic directors, but the presidents, and the testing and all the protocols are going to be available so that we can conduct those games.
Coach, before we move on and talk a little bit about the players and what we can look forward to this year, one last question that's come up around the COVID precautions. I know it's the challenge for you from a recruiting standpoint. Obviously, your trips into Canada are probably not happening right now. Can you talk a little bit about what those challenges have been and how you and your staff are approaching solving them?
Well, we've got hockey TV, so we've been watching as much as we can because there are some different leagues. We had 2 freshmen that we decided it might be in their best interest to stay in Manitoba because their league is already started, but we're starting the beginning of October. But we can watch them on hockey TV. We have a thing called Instat that our players are involved with. So our team, we were already using Instat so that the next day after we play a game, they can watch themselves and their shifts. Well, they also have the rights to a lot of different leagues. Now, a lot of leagues haven't started. Probably half the leagues have not started yet all over the country, but some of them have. And I could type your name in, Matt, if you're associated with a league that is in Instat, and I can just watch your shifts and know your analytics right from that game. So from that standpoint, we're able to stay on top of it the best we can. There's a lot of things that look different on Hockey TV or this Instat that are done live, but the Instat really kind of helps us focus in on the player that maybe a coach has recommended. And in 18 minutes, we can watch all his shifts from a game versus spending over an hour watching a game and that. So there's different ways to do that. It's going to make things a little bit more difficult, but that's what we're dealt with right now. So that's how we're going to have to do it. And I don't know if, the Canadian border for one will open up this year. I don't know if the leagues are going to be able to continue to play depending on how they handle COVID, but we're doing the best we can right now. And just about every state's on New York's naughty list. So the ones in the North American League and things like that, we can't leave the state to go watch any of these players. We would have to quarantine for 14 days if we came back. So we're using TV to the best we can.
I want to stick in one question here before we start talking about the team captains and assistant captains. Our good friend Rocky Piccata, the PA voice of the Tigers, is asking if there's any talk of the players going to exclusively to full shields as opposed to cages on their helmets this year.
That's a great question because we've looked at so many different things. So almost all of our guys are wearing the mask that you would wear when you're walking around underneath their helmets right now. There are some masks that attach to cages or as the windshield, as Rocky put it, but they have not been as comfortable for our players, or they've been difficult to use. That has not been mandated right now. I would like to think, I'm hoping that, quite frankly, the fact that we'll be testing 3 times a week will help solve some of that. We've been lucky so far that we've been virus free. I feel good about when our players are in the rink. I can't say I'm as comfortable once they leave the rink. And I don't think some of the precautions that we're taking right now, like such as hitting, is necessarily preventing them from getting the virus. I think it's what their actions are outside of the rink. And as we've told our guys, we don't want to be that team that has a major outbreak that the country's looking at. Oh, look at RIT Hockey, they've got the virus or whatever. But we also know that, and we know of some teams already, it's already affected and that, so we won't be the first, but it's hard to control. So good question. We've got a 12-page document right now of policies and procedures, and I have not seen the full document right now. I've been worried more about the coaching aspect. I use a electronic whistle now. I don't blow a whistle on the ice. We're masked up on the ice, so we're just doing what we have to do right now to get through our practices and that. But we'll be traveling in 2 buses so that guys won't be sitting right on top of each other. There's guidelines that the buses are using as well that we have to follow. So there's all kinds of things that you have to think about. What used to be a simple, maybe up and back trip to Canisius won't be as simple, as we'll be packing from towels to water bottles to shampoo and soap for showering afterwards. So, there's a lot of things that go into this.
So before this all happened, you had a great schedule, a very difficult schedule, particularly non-conference for this season, with Notre Dame coming in for Brick City and an outdoor game against Bowling Green. And are those games kind of all on the back burner now and going to be thought about in the future, or is that all done and we just move forward?
We're moving forward a little bit, although I've contacted. So as an example, Princeton was supposed to be here for 2 games, and then we were going there next year. We're going to go there next year, and then I've got them on the schedule the following year. So we want to complete our series with, we don't want to be stuck in between, and maybe push off future series back 1 more year. Notre Dame, Blue Cross, because we have other opponents in for the next 2 years. I spoke with them. We'll probably have them in 3 years. We haven't signed a contract yet, so I don't want to make that too official, but that, they're planning on coming back here for our Blue Cross game. And that, I think it's 2023 is what we're looking at, but nothing's been signed. So, is that an announcement? It's a soft announcement. How's that? But, we still have to firm up those details. And as they're going to have to try and look at their schedule and figure out what they have to do to get back on track with their schedule. So I think everyone's doing that a little bit. Now that we think we have this year's schedule under control a little bit, we're starting to, okay, now how do we repair some of the damage that this virus has caused in our scheduling and not leave anyone out.
Coach, a couple of players that are going to be sorely missed from the senior class last year, particularly Sean Cameron, with his 18 goals and 11 assists for 29 points. Who are you looking to step up and kind of fill that role that Sean played for your team last year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess every year you're hoping to lose some really good people. That means, you probably had a pretty good year if you do that, and we're on track. But I really think this group of forwards, and without really naming anyone in particular, there's just a lot of names I could name. I think this group of forwards may be as good a group of forwards as we've had in a long, long time. And that's saying a lot. I think we've had a lot of good forwards. But starting with our leadership, I guess, up front, Will Calvary is just keeps getting better and better every year. I think he's, going to have a great year. He's come back looking great, and he's a captain. Alden Dupuis, a senior captain who's always been valuable, plays so many different situations for us, I think is going to have a really good year. These guys have all had years that have improved upon the year before, and I think they're great. When you look at our power play last year, Will and we had Gonzalez and Caleb up front, they ended up being our number one unit at the end. So they took over for some of the other guys and finish off strong. Willett, as a captain, is back on defense. The defense is where we're going to have some growing pains, as we've got a lot of young guys back there. That's where we're going to have to improve and get better. We feel good about the guys we have. Their experience level is at a minimum. So the other guys are really going to have to kind of help with that. And then our goaltending, we've got 2 senior goalies back, and then obviously now a sophomore in Colby Matthews. But I feel really good for that. So if anything, hopefully our goaltending can erase some of the young mistakes we're going to make back on defense. And then hopefully the forwards can do their job up front. But we do feel really good about this team in a lot of areas. I think a lot of it's going to depend a little on how quickly our young defensemen are going to be able to gel, and are the upperclassmen are going to be able to carry some of that weight to get them through the growing pains. And then you can know a little bit more about, hey, these guys are on a great trajectory on the way up and playing very well, or how can we protect ourselves a little bit back there. So we'll know more Christmas, and most years. This year may take a little longer, but that's why I think even these non-conference games are going to be important, is just to the growth of our young defensemen to get some games under their belt before we get into league play.
You mentioned the captains, Alden Dupuis wearing the C, assisted by Will Calverley and Dan Willett. One of the things that has been fun for us over the years, when we see freshmen come in, we start to watch and see who's starting to show some leadership on the ice. And, you could say that about all those guys. We certainly noticed that with Dan Willett right from his rookie season. What do these guys bring to the team? And what are your thoughts on this group of captains you have this year?
This group, they're talented, but that doesn't make you necessarily a good captain. I think the fact that they're selfless, they're very caring players about their teammates. We can, as you're doing different things with your team, you can, lean on them a little bit, and you can maybe critique their play, and they won't take it personally. I think as you're giving different people opportunity, they understand that. They put their teammates first. I think their work ethic, they lead by example. Probably Dan is maybe the most vocal of the three, but I think just the standard that the three of them put in practice every day, their work ethic, and just their ability. I think sometimes particularly when you get older, you forget about the freshmen. You hang around with your own class a little bit more, whether it's being a senior or a junior with them. But these guys get involved with the young guys and really trying to bring them along. And I think they understand the importance that if you're going to be a good team, you've got to have freshmen that are comfortable and are growing right from the get-go. And we don't need anyone putting them in their place. Maybe that's the coach's job if we think that they're stepping out of bounds a little bit. But we got to get them as comfortable as possible if we want to be a good team. They've got to be contributing right off the get-go. And the sooner they do it, the better we'll be. And I think they clearly understand that. But I just think their work ethic, the selflessness, and their ability to just they just get it. You know, like they'll be saying, I know right now they'll be saying the right things in the locker room in between periods. And it's nice that the coach doesn't always have to do that.
You talked about the defense being a little bit young this year. 4 freshmen or 3 freshmen and a transfer defenseman joining the team, which means at a minimum 2 of them are going to be addressing every game. Can you talk about those 4 newcomers a little bit and what you've seen from them so far?
Yeah, they've all, at first it's going, boy, this might take a while, but if there's any benefit of having this long, training camp, much longer than most years, it's, I don't know what, I even mentioned it after practice, but we had maybe 2 weeks ago, it just like the light just seemed to click for them out in practice, and they got it. They're still making some mistakes, and we have upperclassmen making mistakes. We have coaches that have been around maybe too long, still making mistakes. But like it's being minimized now. Like they're really, I've really seen a big growth spurt in their work habits and what's needed. I think the upperclassmen have done a very good job of showing how you need to work. And this year, more than any year, like there's years where we get together as a team and we start practicing before our first game, and you've only got maybe 2 weeks or whatever of these limited hour practices. But I just thought we'd have a lot more lulls in our practice because the season was so far away when you start, roughly October 1 or whatever it is, it's like, wow, are we ever going to get to this season? And our guys have done a very good job of being very consistent and working hard every day. I think one of those reasons is that it's the best part of their day. They're at home, they're on Zoom, their social interaction is minimal at best on campus. And, they love hockey, and the fact that we were able to practice from a mental standpoint, I can't stress, has been a huge, huge factor. I don't even know if our administrators understand how important it is for them to be on the ice and all the athletes to be kind of doing what they do, that it has been a big boost for them to be on the ice every day. And that's been great.
Coach, following up on the defenseman question with the younger squad, last year, Adam Brubaker for you had 24 assists on the season, which is just stellar production. And I know a lot of that came from his special teams play, but who do you expect to step up and kind of fill that role for you this year?
Well, again, it might be a little bit by committee on defense. I think Willett and Regan Sieperling, another senior, will be able to help out. We've got Hammaker on the power play this year with those other 3 guys, Caleb, Elijah, and Will up front. So it's Willett and Hammaker. And he doesn't have the same shot or one-time shot as Brubaker. He's got a heck of a shot, more of a wrist shot, and he gives us a different dimension with the way he passes the puck and things like that. So we definitely have a different look back there, maybe a little bit more balanced. I think we moved the puck around a lot over the last 4 years almost with Brubaker, and when it ended up on Adam's stick, it was a one-time shot. So that was the punchline to the joke all the time. Teams picked up on it and it made it very difficult. So I think we've got a little more balance in the power play, but we'll have to see how that all turns out when we see someone else. So from a power play standpoint, that could be someone to look at, Hammaker, but he's not a defenseman. So if you're looking at defensemen, we're going to have to look at other people. And I think Spencer Berry's another player that's taken a big jump. I think he's been kind of waiting in the wings. He's been playing a lot of games, but didn't get a lot of playing time in the games. And I think he sees the moment. He came back in great shape, and he's looked very good for us too. So that's another player that, he may not put up the points that Brubaker did, but he'll contribute in a lot of different ways, and he'll eat up some different minutes for us as well, from what I've seen.
Wayne, as the game evolves, how do you as a coaching staff prepare for a season and maybe start incorporating different things that you see happening maybe at the pro level?
That's a great question. Just a little bit how we're preparing for this year that's a little bit different is that we have guys that their inter-squad game is on Fridays. And starting last Saturday, we'll be doing it this Saturday, and even next Saturday, we'll be reviewing the tape and going over it with the guys, which is a little bit different for us in an inter-squad game. So by doing that, I think we can start critiquing on them and not wait to get games played before we can get on them about, hey, we're not doing this right, whether it be breakouts, forechecks, face-offs, plays, things like that. I think this year will be a little bit different that way, in that we're trying to get prepped. This quite hasn't answered your question, but we don't know how long this season is going to be, and I want to get off to a good start. I want to be in our non-conference games, as an example, 4-0, because those might be the only 4 games we play this year. Something could happen where it's shut down and we don't play anymore, but we may play the 28 games. But as we look at what some of the things that have transpired, I think we were kind of ahead of the curve with our defensemen joining the rushes, and more, we didn't have the big guys that were just defensive defensemen and just try and pound on people. We had the defensemen that were more offensive oriented, and we've stuck with that. I think a lot of teams have gone that route, but I remember back as far as 10 years, our Frozen Four team, just the fact that we had 4 defensemen with over 10 goals was one aspect of it. I think Wisconsin was the only other team to have that. And we've always believed in that philosophy, so maybe we've been ahead of the curve, but that's not unusual. But we get to study in the summer a lot of professional development with NHL people. So whether it be practice drills, whether it be some systems we've tweaked a couple things, but still sticking with our identity of being an offensive, aggressive type team. We're still going to play that style. Does that answer what you're wondering? Yeah. Maybe I went off course a little bit.
Staying with the coaching staff for a minute, David Salako was promoted over the summer to associate coach. Over the last few seasons, he's been really creative on the penalty kill and working with the defensemen and things. And he really brings a lot to the team. So it was a well-deserved promotion. Absolutely.
I've just been really lucky to have really my whole coaching staff for the most part back. Mike had left and is in Arizona, and Lenny Perno's with us with the goalies. Nate Van Kallenberg with our strength coach has been great. And Steve Henchen, and I should mention Spencer as our equipment. But I've been more than lucky with both my assistants. Brian can be a head coach. Dave could be a head coach. I'm shocked that Dave has not been picked up by another team, but I guess I've been fortunate in that way. But he's more than ready to take another step. And he's kind of the one, to Ed's question, is really studies the NHL and brings a lot of different aspects of the pro game to our game that we think fits the type of team we want to be. And I think Tampa's probably that example, not just because they won the cup, but we'd love to be, play like Tampa. And that's the identity that we'd like.
Coach, stepping back for a minute to the question about training and prep for the season and kind of the long training camp. I know the training camp's also a little modified. You had a passing comment earlier on about checking and hitting being something you have to be careful about right now. How do you make sure that you're still physically ready to play the game when the games do start?
Yeah, and that's always going to be tough because it's always a rude awakening. Same with guys in their conditioning. They could be in great shape, but they might not be in skating shape. So cardiovascular-wise, it's always a little bit different for the players once they start skating. But it has, unfortunately, like all other sports, it's your primary sport, and you're doing it all year round. So not too many guys. They're probably off the ice more this summer than any other summer because of the closure of a lot of rinks. But the contact is something that we're going to have to deal with. But I will also say the contact has been slowly being eliminated. Not that I'm a fan of that in our games anyways. It seems like if you hit a guy too hard, it's going to be, if it's by the boards, it's boarding. If it's in the middle of the ice, it's, charging. It just seems like no matter what you do now, you're getting calls. So our game is going in that direction anyway. So as I said, and this is not to, we're almost playing a women's type game, and they're pretty aggressive. So that's not hopefully a derogatory a comment about the women's game. They get pretty physical too, but we're not doing any open ice hitting or hitting into the boards. We are rubbing out and just the regular contact, trying to get the puck off of someone else. But we did a lot of skill work early to get their conditioning up. We're in that phase for almost a whole month of September. It seemed that way because we didn't get on the ice till the beginning of September. So the guys school started, I think they were back the latest August 14th, but somewhere around that time period. It seems so long ago. We've gone 2.5 months now in some form of a team, whether it be that 4 or 6 or whether it be in the 10 to 12 or whether it's now as a full team. So we've been together for a long time right now, and I feel, like I said, safer. We're just hoping that no one brings the virus into the bubble, our bubble.
One of the things that I think we talked about back in the spring was having 4 goalies on the roster. And I know some people are wondering about that. You explained that, but maybe you could mention again why you brought in another goalie when you already had 3.
Yeah, Daniel Chenard is the goalie that we brought in, and we looked at him pretty close back a couple years. He played with Will in Chilliwack when they won the national championship, the Canadian championship in junior hockey that year, and had a spectacular year. But he ended up having to have surgery, and he was really out for 3/4 of the following year, and then made his comeback again, where he was back playing again this year. But he was very interested in RIT. We were still interested in him. We looked at our goalie situation and really wanted to break up our senior class a little bit. We were going to be losing Logan and Ian this year, and 2 very, very good goalies, and thought this may be one way that, as long as he understood the circumstances, which he did, that we're not losing anyone. You'll be coming in, and I'm not saying he is the 4th. I'm just saying he would be joining 3 goalies to make us at a group of 4. And it's gone, I think, very well so far, but it is a difficult situation when goalies expect more, I guess, shots and things like that in practice. That's the thing that we're trying to work the kinks out right now, and so that's the difficult part. But we went with that just to break it up so that we weren't looking for 2 goalies. It may be a blessing in disguise that if we get a virus in 1 or 2 of our goalies, we have 4. It may be a blessing in that it's going to be difficult to evaluate goalies on hockey TV, as I was saying, not seeing anyone live and getting to meet with them. Some of our recruiting, we've been Zooming with the families, which is also different. It's hard to get to know someone that way. It's nice to meet with a player, maybe his family after a game, and get to see them and talk to them and see how they interact with each other versus on a screen. So it might be a blessing from even just that way, that it's such a unique year, and then we can go from there. But those are things that we're evaluating and on a day-to-day basis. But that's some of the reasoning that went behind that. It was someone that we thought a lot of. They liked RIT, and it's the breakup, having 2 goalies in 1 class.
You talked about the first power play line a little bit, but for 5-on-5, the forward lines, are they starting to come together, some of the combinations there?
We will probably start with that on Monday now. So we have done a lot of mixing and matching. That's another blessing we had. We've had given a lot of people opportunities on the power play just to take a look, maybe just to even move some things around to help us be a little bit more creative in our thinking. Because when you have that, like I said, 4 hours a week is what we were dealing with before. And we were off on the road recruiting every weekend, normally Thursday night through Sunday night or Monday morning, and starting October 3rd, it was hard to give guys a fair opportunity. and some guys may think that we're still not, but we are attempting to do that. Before, you kind of went with what you thought and then really what was going on in the practice at that particular time, but practicing was so limited. And when you start playing, you don't have much wiggle room to experiment. We're not like the pros or the junior programs where you play exhibition games. So we're using these, like I even said, these Friday games right now that we're reviewing on video as our exhibition games before we get going. But we've been doing a little bit of that. So we have a pretty good idea. And guess what? We're going to change lines throughout the year anyways a little bit. We'll continue to tinker. But we have a pretty good idea now after, like I said, 2.5 months of where we want to start with and what we want to do, and we'll go from there.
Speaking of toying with those lines a little throughout the year, one thing that we often see you do is work those freshmen in more and more as the year goes on, and they seem to catch up with the college game. You've already talked about your new freshman goalie coming in. You do have 3 freshman D-men and 1 forward coming in as well, and I was wondering if you could take a moment and just give us kind of an introduction to that freshman class. And
yeah, I think for us, I think Cody's made a real big impact. Laskowski up front, and he's done a really good job coming in. He'll probably start on the lower lines, and as we've got a lot of upperclassmen back, and so we'll see where that goes. But I foresee him moving up, but he's going to have to earn that, and we'll see how comfortable he gets once we start playing games. I'm just trying to think. Ian Boots on defense is a transfer from AIC. He's probably a little bit ahead. He's been in college already for a year. He's practiced with great teammates there in AIC. A team that won the championship last year. He knows what to expect. So he's not quite as in awe of the practices and the tempo and things like that. So it was a good player to bring in this class because it is such a big class, and that with him, we expect him to settle in very comfortably as we move along here. He still has to, like everyone else, prove himself and things like that, but we'll go from there. Demo, Jamiro on defense, came from Trail, an offensive defenseman. I'd say he probably started off maybe a little slow, but he's one of the guys that probably has taken off quite a bit here over the last 2-3 weeks, getting more comfortable. I think he was used to playing at a junior pace, if I could say that. He was able to control things in junior hockey, and things are happening pretty quick for him. And so I'd say that's where he needed to pick up the place. Dimitri Micro Giannakis, good luck, guys, with that as you're announcing the games. But another player that had a great junior year, and very much like Demo, at first I was like, wow, these guys are pretty quick, and wow, pretty strong, and things are happening pretty quick out here. He's another guy that's really settling in, and like I said, they're very similar. They're all kind of on, like I said, the 1 week they just seem to all kind of pop at the same time. Aiden, Hanson, Piccata, another guy, we've practiced him a little bit on the second power play right now. So there's another guy that is adjusting. But I think we're going to have to wait to really see how they do in games. They're all going to get in these non-conference games. We're carrying 8 defensemen, but 7 can dress, and we will dress 7 defensemen again. And we're going to get them all in just to see where they're at, because I think it's important that they all grow. And some of them may really take off and never look back. Others may start off hot and then maybe hit a rut, and they've got to kind of take a little bit of time away from their ice time and let them see the game from the stands, not as punishment, but just to help their growth and things like that. So, and then who do they play well with? We'd like to match them with some upperclassmen. We really would prefer not to dress 2 freshmen together, but we'll have to see how that goes as well. So you never can predict. Never thought we'd finish last year with 2 freshmen on our power play, and also Ryan Nicholson on the second power play unit. I never thought that would happen, but it evolves. And as we tell all our incoming freshmen, we think a lot of you, and we think you're going to be able to be key contributors with our team, but you still have to earn everything. And we've got upperclassmen that want their ice time and they want their position. So we've got to be open-minded. And this year, if nothing else, we've been able to do that a little bit more than we have in the past for sure. Because I think we do get a little maybe stubborn in our thinking and our thoughts maybe are too aligned for what they've done in the past and don't really give them the same opportunity of a fresh look. But this extended training camp has been able to do that for us.
Got a couple of questions that relate to fans. One is, what effect do you think it'll have on the team without fans there? You think back to the tradition of RIT hockey, going back to the days at Ritter and then at Policini. When there's a good crowd, it's electric. So what do you think the effect might be? And have there been any thoughts of pumping in some crowd noise?
Well, we've addressed that. I'm not quite sure what we're going to be. There's going to be obviously music for sure. We do have the message board. The guys have done their messages now. Maybe they're the only one that's going to be looking up at that message board now, but they'll be there. And they have talked about putting in crowd noise. I don't know what the capabilities of our facility is. Gianna's working on that as well. She's been great through this, trying to make it a great environment. But getting back to your question about the fans in particular, our guys are going to miss them a ton. But you know what? I think the visitors are going to miss them as well. And, I've said this, I know the Policini is supposed to be home ice advantage. The fans get you pumped up. I know every team that's come in here, the upperclassmen have talked to this is awesome. Best rink to play in on the road. Their fans are crazy. They get on. Yeah, this is awesome. Our opponents are always pumped to play in our facility. It's going to maybe feel like we're playing on the road a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a jab or at our opponents or what, but it's going to be obviously a lot quieter and things like that. We're going to miss them and miss our downtown game. All those things we're going to miss. And, I feel for our seniors. The other thing I should mention, that a rule that came out that I don't think you addressed, but you talked about recruiting. We may be getting on some of our players that want to come back and get their masters. They're going to be granted another year of eligibility this year, seniors, whether we play 0 games, 8 games, or 28 games. So it's really kind of up to them whether they're all going to graduate on time. That's a good thing, I guess. On a year like this, I guess I wish they weren't graduating on time so that I'd give them an excuse to come back and finish up. But our guys are all graduating on time. So really the only option for them if they did come back is grad school. So you've got to want to do that as well. And we'll see how that works out. But we'll cross that bridge. I think in November we'll have a better feel for things, and then they can let us know, and then we can either ease back on some of the recruiting if our players. We would take all our seniors back. Difficult for them, the way the season ended last year as juniors, and with no fans this year, no Blue Cross game for them this year, and we don't know how the year is going to finish here this year. That they're all welcome back at any time. I really would love to see them all come back just to finish things off the way that it started, with packed stands and so much excitement to come to the rink, and one of the main reasons why they chose RIT. So I'm wishing the best for them as well.
Another question from our listeners was revolved around the Canadian border. Was there any trouble getting the players from Canada across the border, and what might they be doing around the holidays if they get a break too?
Well, great question there. And we did a lot of research. We were contacting the border, but students were considered essential crossing, so they were able to get across. There's the quarantine piece, same as the players with the hot states at the time back then. The guys from actually Alaska and California, so Hammaker and Boots is also from Alaska that played with Caleb and that. So they also had a quarantine and things like that. So, but during Christmas, they will not be going home. So these guys are sacrificing a lot, never mind Thanksgiving time, but Christmas, because if they went back to Canada, they would have to quarantine 14 days there. And as of right now, if they came back here, 14 days. And quarantine sounds like, okay, so whatever, but there's no exercising. It's 28 days. So, and then we'd need at least 1 to 2 weeks to get them back in shape for the second thing. So they will be with us. So they're sacrificing a lot, and that, I think, tells you their whole commitment. And it's a commitment that happens every year. They get normally 1 week at Christmas time, but they don't get Thanksgiving off. They don't get all these different holidays. They don't get weekends off for the majority of a school year. It's from basically October 1 through April 1. They are tied up every weekend and don't have the same luxury. So as much as they enjoy the fans and playing in front of the fans, and they're lucky to be doing that, they don't get the breaks that a lot of other students do. So, and it's not like we can plan a lot for them to make it a fun time. It's not like, hey, let's movie night. Oh yeah, movies we can't go to right. Let's do laser tag. No, we're not doing that. Yeah, so there's just so much they can't do that it's tough. But this is what they want to do, and this is what they love doing.
I'm just going through the questions here from the audience. There's only a couple left. One of them from a longtime RIT hockey fan. Given the decision to leave scheduling responsibilities of the conferences, is there any concern that by not stating that the national championship is off, that teams will put games in as possible and possibly ignore health and safety protocols in order to do so to ensure or give them a better shot at that national championship?
No, with us right now, with all the protocols that are in place, and we even have limitations on if you have 13 players that are healthy, that is a game that you can play. So there's all kinds of things, precautions where teams don't take games off. There's all kinds of precautions with testing. And I don't think any school, or I don't think that has even crossed anyone. I know coaches and players are all competitive, but a lot of those things have not crossed our minds. We're the safety of our players and our RIT community and Rochester as a whole will always be number one. And people may question that because we're playing the games, but it will be. And I can tell you that any signs of trouble, any positive, we will be shut down. So there's no cutting corners. And how they pick our NCAA field, that is just starting to happen at the NCAA level, because the pairwise will be out the window. I mean, I know we've got teams, but to try and compare leagues and teams and that won't be done, as a lot of leagues aren't playing non-conference, and the limited non-conference game we play would be such a small sampling that won't happen. So right now it's, we're going by other guidelines, which is 1 automatic, but 2 automatics could be a possibility from each league. The subjective part, I don't know how we get the subjective, but that will be, they've talked about history, but history changes every year. One league could be stronger, one team that may be on a roll. If just using last year's team, not knowing exactly what a team like Cornell or Mankato or North Dakota looked like, that were at the top of the standings, they might have graduated a bunch of people. So many different things could happen that they may be at the bottom of their league this year. So doing history and things like that make it really difficult. So that is going to be very, very challenging for the NCAA people. But we're very determined to try and get our championships, and we just hope to reach that stage. That's, right now we're trying to reach the finish line of when the students will get to go home, and then like I said, we'll be in our own kind of bubble with our men's and women's hockey team, the only teams on campus at that point, and then trying to survive when all the students come back in late January, and then you could be COVID free, and then if you get it the last weekend of the year, you're in big trouble. You could be shut down, and if it's shut down for 14 days, you're going to miss the playoffs. That's as simple as that.
There's a question, maybe something to clarify. You mentioned about the players being masked in practice. What about during games? Masked on the bench, masked on the ice? What's the protocol for that?
Right now, they won't be wearing masks for games. So that's another phase, and that's really the phase that you go through the state and all that for any maybe things that you have to go through for that. So that's to my knowledge, we won't be wearing masks during games. We'll be in one locker room, so some of those things will be done once we get the official okay from the state at that phase. And don't take it word for word, but it's along those lines. So
There's been so much creativity by people, both the staff, the players, but also so many people behind the scenes. Blue Spiati and his team and the president's office and sports information and everything. Can you talk a little bit about all of the people that don't necessarily stand in the limelight, how they've been helped get us to this point?
yeah, there's almost too many to mention, but Jeff Siegel is one as our former equipment manager. That he's been in charge of the testing, at least implementing the testing on our campus. So back to school, I know our coaching staff volunteered to help with. We did it with the orientation leaders and things like that, getting them checked in and making sure they were doing their daily screening and that they were negative before they could even get on campus. So these people have been working that. Pat Safaya that works directly with both hockey teams and just being involved with all the different phases and being a site monitor as far as making sure that we're following the protocols at whatever particular phase we were in at that point of time. So whether it be our early return and we're in our small groups to where we are right now, keeping us up to date with all the different things we're doing. Pre-game meals, how are they going to be served? Are we going to be eating together? Are we taking them on the bus? Are we stopping our bus to eat somewhere? All these different things are all things that we're looking at. So those people have been nonstop COVID. They haven't yet have to be monitoring the games and things like that, but they've been nonstop behind the scenes doing everything. Bethany keeping us up to date with all the new COVID rules and regulations from the NCAA, and Scott McVeigh, the budgets, the increased costs. So we're saving a heck of a lot of money on recruiting right now, but we're spending a heck of a lot of money on testing our players. So there's all these different things that they prepare as it all goes up the channel and it goes from Lou Spiati's desk as he gathers all this information up to our Vice President, Sandra Johnson, up to our President, Dr. Munson. So all these people have been extremely supportive, but have been dotting the I's and crossing the T's, making sure that this is being done in a manner that is not going to jeopardize not only our players, but just as importantly, our RIT community, whether it be our other fellow students or faculty, staff, and all the other people. But if you're in the buildings that we're in our building on a regular basis, they're constantly cleaning our door handles and spraying everything. And the janitorial staff on campus has increased immensely. And we have a lot of people around making sure that everything's in the best condition it can be to help prevent and stop the virus.
Well, Coach, we're just about out of time. Any last thing that we forgot to ask you about that you'd want to mention?
Well, I'm glad I didn't have to answer any questions from Tommy Kane out there. But we'll enjoy having him back at some point asking questions out there. No, just really looking forward to the season. We're going to miss everyone. We hope that you're able to tune in. Hopefully they do get on local TV and they're streamed if you want to see it live. And the games will be streamed. I don't know all the particulars on that just yet. And hopefully our schedule will come out early next week, if not tomorrow. We're hoping for that everyone can eyeball it. And we appreciate all the support. Looking forward to doing this in the future here to keep our fans up to date. And I think the questions as people are watching us on TV or through their computers are able to ask questions about players in particular, maybe have some players on as well to help get us through this. And really just, we're just hoping that we can do our part and have a season and for our senior sake and reminding everyone to wash your hands and wear your masks and socially distance. I mean, I don't think there's anything more that we can say nationally, but in particular on our campus and in our community, we hope that this gets back to normal as soon as possible. And maybe after Christmas, we'll have some fans, whether it be a certain percentage or whatever. That would be great. I'd love to see our seniors' parents in the stands at some point. That would be great to just have them even for senior night. That's just something small, but we hope to be playing hockey at that time and hoping to to challenge for a championship is what it's all about, and to compete and do the things they love here at RIT.
Well, we do plan to have 3 more seminars like this during the course of the season, sponsored by the Alumni Association, including one coming up in December as we look at hopefully what's the beginning of the season. We're going to put in a plug for Matt and Scott and myself. We don't know what's going to be allowed from the radio side of things, but you can follow us on Twitter at RIT Hockey Radio. And but we do want to thank the Alumni Association for making this possible, and definitely want to thank Coach Wayne Wilson for spending the time with us and with all of you this evening. Ron?
Yeah, it's been great. So happy to be talking hockey. Thanks so much, guys.
Great.
Even you, Matt.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you being a part of this evening, and we really look forward to the upcoming sessions as well, and following RIT Hockey in the upcoming months. So that's all the time we have for today. Any additional questions can be emailed to ritalum@rit.edu, and we'll direct your questions to our presenters. Again, we thank you for joining us tonight. We have several virtual events planned in the upcoming weeks, and the Alumni Association would like to include you in as many of them as possible. A special note, on November 12th, we'll host RIT's Global Cybersecurity Institute Showcase, featuring exclusive updates on our Global Cybersecurity Institute from key faculty and students. As well, on November 23rd, we welcome back alumna Anna Ronchevich, Managing Director of Sea Soul Yachting, who will perform and host a session on luxury tourism. We hope that you'll join us for both of those sessions. Please exit this webinar by simply closing your live storm window, and please do let us know what you thought of the webinar through a brief survey that you'll receive via email. Have a wonderful night and stay healthy. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Boy, that flew. I will find out about the radio, though, too. Tim hasn't been around much just because of his newborn, and with this, there's not a lot. We correspond a little bit on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know everything's going to be spaced up there somehow, but I do think they're planning at home games. I never even thought of. I just assumed you're doing the home games.
Yeah.
It's the road games I wasn't sure about.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly room to spread out at the other arenas.
Yeah. You can
always
sit in the stands if you want.
Exactly. We can do it from the stands.
Tim already mentioned to me, well, it was probably a month ago, he said, if we don't have visitors, we can use the second radio booth and spread out that way. And we're working on getting another wireless setup so we could have a headset and wireless out somewhere in the stands too, and some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So. I will start looking into that for you guys too. Maybe I just assumed too much, but anyways. All right, a nice glass of Chardonnay for the kid here, and.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Great job.
Bye.
Thanks.